This conference will now be recorded.
You're not Garfield? No.
Good afternoon. Clerk, please start the recording. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, and I'd like to call today's work session to order. Clerk, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Fox,
Present.
Councilmember Casberg,
Here.
Councilmember Boyle,
Late, but will be arriving.
Assume.
Councilmember Leha,
Present.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Present.
Mayor Strobin.
Here. Thank you, Clerk. All right. Today we do have two presentations. The first one is Council for the Homeless, and Laura Ellsworth and Sunny Wonder will be presenting to the council. Hi, come on up. Yep, please. I thought Miss Cessny was going to be here, or no?
Cessny was not able to come. I'm
Okay.
Sunny Wonder. I'm the Deputy Director at Council for the Homeless.
All right.
And I'm Laura Ellsworth. I'm the Public Policy and Engagement Manager with Council for the Homeless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here today. We had an informative and educational week last week in Clark County talking about solutions to unsheltered homelessness. And we truly believe that we can work together to make a real impact on unsheltered homelessness in Clark County. I want to just talk to you a little bit about what's called coordinated entry and outreach as we get started, just to kind of lay a foundation as this discussion unfolds today. Just really want to highlight the effectiveness of coordinated entry into the homeless crisis response system, of which Council for the Homeless does. We operate the housing hotline, and that is one single phone number. And you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. One single phone number that people can call to begin to initiate resolving their homelessness. Not only that, but they get connected to services that help them meet basic needs, access to, if available, emergency shelter, and I do highlight the word available, and other things that help folks who are experiencing homelessness in our community, and that is for the entire county. The idea is that there is one phone number for people to call so that they don't sort of have to run around and call different agencies for different things. And also we have coordinated outreach. And what that is are the teams of folks, social service providers, who go out into the communities all across the county and just talk to the people who are living outside and try to initiate connecting them to services to help resolve their homelessness. And that is a process. It takes a lot of trust building, a lot of interactions. It can take up to 17 interactions with a service provider, with an outreach worker, to help somebody fully resolve their homelessness, because it just takes time and personal connection. We do have outreach in the center. Right now it's a kind of a case-by-case basis. If somebody calls for help. We send people out, but we're really hoping to, in the future, make that more accessible and more regular. So sending teams out here regularly and having a contact with the city of La Center that we can connect with regularly and just start building that trust, quite frankly, by having a presence here regularly. Last year in 2022, throughout the entire calendar year, 23 people with the zip code of 98629 accessed our homeless system, but we do recognize that that is very likely not, it's an undercount. It's just the people who reached out. But it's the data that we have, and we're just excited to work together, and we would like to keep in touch with whoever it is with the city to really start, building a relationship and keeping all of this going forward. So I'll turn it over to Sunny. Can you go to the next slide?
Thank you. So we are talking about just providing some information about when you're considering a daytime camping ban considerations, just some pieces of information that in our work that we would encourage you to consider that might be perhaps unintended consequences or additional factors on how that might impact folks that are experiencing homelessness. One of the really big pieces, so for unsheltered residents experiencing homelessness, so these are kind of the different categories, the different folks that potentially could be impacted. One of the pieces is for folks who are needing to move on a regular basis, that is knowing the impact of gas in particular. A lot of folks that we've seen increased rates of homelessness are actually folks with fixed income. So we are seeing a lot more seniors that are experiencing homelessness. And it is an inability to afford inability to afford cost of living increases. So rent continues to increase. So gas is a really big one. So needing to move places becomes just more arduous and difficult for them. So kind of needing to find a place and be able to stay can sometimes be important. And another factor is being able to connect to services. So as we're talking about kind of the work that outreach does and the work that we would like to do, we're working on zones and being able to have identified teams that are going out to specific zones. And one of those really important pieces is that we are able to connect and know where folks are at. So that can be difficult when folks are needing to move on a regular basis and they don't have a set spot that they're able to be located. So there are just the considerations of gas and kind of the impacts of moving around. Of course, there are two different areas, right? There are folks that are unsheltered homelessness that don't have a vehicle. So that's someone who perhaps, as you see, who's setting up a tent, and that might be more visible homelessness. And then there's someone who's in their vehicle who has perhaps a lot of different stuff in their car, and it might not necessarily be clear if they're experiencing homelessness, but you perhaps could see that are experiencing housing instability or poverty, and how that might impact them is going to look very different from someone who is staying in a tent. So knowing, setting up a tent, needing to pull that tent down in the morning, there are going to be those health considerations, health and safety, right, that you're having to consider, but also recognizing that there is an impact when people are needing to move. And sometimes if they're needing to move away from kind of centralized locations, it becomes more difficult to connect to those resources. So someone who on a fixed income who perhaps has health issues, it's more difficult for them to connect to those services as they're like traversing through the community. Next slide, please. Was this one me? Oh. So I touched on a few of these. So just encouraging you to consider how will the ordinances address people living in tents and cars versus potentially RVs as well. Again, kind of goes back to one, the consideration, of course, of health and safety, and also recognition that there can be an impact when folks are needing to pack up and move. But particularly for cars and RVs, it can most definitely be difficult to find places that are safe to stay uninterrupted and feel that you're safe in that location. Tents absolutely would apply. But that I know that in conversation with folks, that absolutely has been a really big impact on finding a place that they're able to stay safely. RVs, of course, are very big, and finding a location where you can park that safely can be a difficult undertaking. Another piece that we want to flag is just how the ordinance will determine if someone is homeless versus carrying a lot of possessions. So just interactions with folks who, I know that we often will see folks doing outreach. Someone might call and say, hey, there's someone experiencing homelessness, and it might be someone who collects a lot of stuff. And so just recognition that there might be some impacts there. We definitely run into that from time to time. And then an additional consideration, how will the ordinance be enforced, and what will enforcement do to help people resolve a person's homelessness rather than hinder it? And one of those big pieces is when there is enforcement of, potentially a fine. So thinking of those folks that are on fixed income, often that is incredibly limited income, and then navigating a fine on top of that can be particularly arduous for them. So it kind of becomes this cyclical pattern that is happening over and over. So just those considerations we feel are really, really important to consider. And then just a recommendation, having a place where folks can go if you create places where they cannot go. So having a place where people are able to go perhaps during the day. So if there is, hey, here are places that you're not able to camp, here is some place that you are able to go. And again, particularly considering folks that are in their vehicles, but having locations that people are able to safely go. And next slide. So right here, we're just looking at camping bans, what they do and do not do. So they absolutely are going to reduce visible homelessness during the day. They are also, one of those, it's a double-edged sword. It is going to make it more difficult for outreach teams to locate and assist folks. That is kind of one of those challenges that we have of finding folks when someone says, hey, there's someone who's needing help. When folks are moving along, or hey, you can't be here, that it can be very difficult as folks are moving around throughout the community. Often folks will have a place that they identify that is safe, that they're able to stay, and that's the place that they'll go back to. So it becomes a bit more difficult if they are moving around more regularly. And then they do not end a person's experience of homelessness, and also do not make things easier for people who are already struggling. Are there any questions?
Yeah, how, and I know this has come up in the ECHO meetings,
Yeah.
and we're still waiting for answers on that. How are you guys measuring your success at reintegrating people back into society, right? And becoming productive members of society? Because in there, if you go back to that slide that said camping bans, if you can go back one clerk, please. Make it more difficult for outreach teams to locate and assist people. Is that, how do you keep those metrics, really? That's the answer that 5 mayors have been asking for months, and we just haven't been able to get a clear-cut answer.
Yeah.
Because I know that the county is saying they've thrown $15 million at Council for the Homeless and outreach programs, yet the population of homelessness continues to increase.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about some of these bans, we do have to have some sort of law and order, right? There has to be stuff that's acceptable and what's not acceptable in society, and we have to uphold those to the full extent. So it really, how do you guys keep track of the metrics?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I will say to that. Absolutely, we've seen an increase in homelessness, and Council for the Homeless, I wouldn't argue with you on that. That is the reality. And we see an increase in visible homelessness. And that absolutely is something that no matter where we are in, relation to homelessness, it is not something that any of us want to see. and Council for the Homeless, absolutely, it is heartbreaking to see the increase. And it ties to a lot of different factors. We, at ECHO have said, and I will continue to say, an incredible increase in affordable housing, like a lack of affordable housing. We've seen a huge increase in rent. I know there was one place that I called them up and said, is this right? What is happening? Because the rent had increased by $1,000 in a month, a single month. And it is particularly pinching very hard for folks that are on fixed incomes. That's the thing that we're seeing. So we're seeing seniors and other folks that are on fixed incomes. How we measure success is a couple of pieces. So one of the things that we're looking at when we are housing folks, so our goal, I will say, is to house folks. And that is something with the presentation that we sent along, Mark Eichenbaum, like how can we look at this and really kind of cut aside some of the stuff of like, let's put someone here, let's put someone here, let's put someone here, versus let's house people. How can we house people and get the folks connected to the services that they need once they're housed? So it's going to look different for a lot of different people. But that's really the gauge that we're going off of. So when we're looking at those system numbers, you can see them on Council for the Homeless's website. We're looking at when we say someone is housed, re-entry back into the system is the thing that is going to say, hey, that didn't work. This person is touching the system again. So there's something going on here. This person maybe was housed, but just barely housed. So the rent increased, whatever the case may be. So that's the piece that we're looking at when we're, kind of the numbers that we're talking about. It's re-entry into the system. So if someone over an outreach housed someone, we're going to be looking over a 2-year time frame, which I will say our outreach teams has grown pretty expansively. We've seen some incredible successes, and it's pretty brand new. So we're seeing good outcomes, and we're also pretty new in the outreach, like just the expansion that we've seen.
Can you give me some ideas of some of those success stories?
I'm
Because you're saying that you've had success in some of this stuff. Can you give me some ideas of what that success looks like?
So with the outreach, I'm trying to remember. Do you have?
We housed 565 households last year. That's more than our system has. And when I say we, I mean the collective system.
Right.
I don't mean
Right.
homeless, because we're not a housing provider. But that's more than ever. And also more than people than ever before fell into homelessness. In fact, 2/3 of the people who touched our system in 2020 had never been homeless. So this speaks directly to housing inaffordability.
And do you see them graduating out of those houses and going back into society?
Yeah. Generally,
Okay.
the people who get housed, and so like what solves homelessness is our homes, because you're no longer homeless when you have a home. And I know it sounds so easy and trite, but it really is powerful when you think about it. And so what it is if somebody remains in that housing for 2 years, it's housing plus services, especially for the visibly chronically homeless population. So when you give someone housing and services, the housing makes the services successful, and the services make the housing successful. And about 90% of the people generally stay housed after 2 years.
That's good to hear. And I do agree with you on the rent raise or the rising rent cost. As I stated to the council last meeting, I had a family member whose rent went up $1,400.
Yeah.
And shot to $3,100 for a 2-bedroom. So I do agree with that. And it is nice to hear about some of the success there. That's been some of the concern that the mayors have had in the ECHO meetings as well.
But I'm wondering how, to me, it wasn't an accurate explanation of really what the success is, because I don't know, in my mind, I'm wondering, okay, who contacted those people that have become successful? Are those the people that you're contacting 17 times? Because I think from the community perspective, the people that are going to be affected by the camping bans and affecting the livability issues in the city are more likely the people that don't want help and won't go to any shelter, because that's a large percentage of the homeless population, I think. And I don't know if that number is being looked at. And, you know, if somebody wants to be housed, a lot of times they just need push to get going. And not that it's not a success story, but it's not I think, accurate measure of really what the system is doing.
So I think that there are a couple things. One, and there was actually just an article in the Columbian about that subject specifically. What we have found in our work is that there are many folks that would say, I don't want to go to shelter. The other piece is the reality is we don't have enough shelter. If we're talking specifically shelter, we do not have enough shelter to meet the need of people who are like, I want shelter. And it is this, recognition that shelter costs an incredibly huge amount of money to build, let alone continue to run. Are there people who don't want to engage in services? Yeah, there are folks that don't want to engage in services. And so many people that do want to engage in services, so many people who do consistently want to the resources and support. Often the really important factor, the piece to really consider are, being able to provide when I'm talking about, what does success look like? How are we measuring success? One, our system is looking at the number of people that are housed. So in our system, so HMIS is the system that we're using, so our homeless management information system. We are capturing the folks that are getting housed into a program and are staying successfully housed. So we're not going to individual folks, and we absolutely will have connection with folks after the fact, but that isn't the specific piece that we're looking at, but instead when they're re-engaging with the system is how we're gauging that success. So I'm definitely not trying to dodge or not provide accurate information, but the way that we capture that information is who is touching our system, who is engaging, who is either calling the housing hotline or engaging with our outreach services. So, and that would be how we are capturing who is re-engaging with services.
So your outreach teams, how is that staffed? How many people are there?
Yeah.
And then how do they get dispatched out? Do they go out on their own? Do they wait for the phone call to come in? Could you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So on our website, we actually we're going through a little bit of a process change so that we can ensure that we're getting both urban areas as well as rural areas, that we're connecting with jurisdictions across the county. So on our website, there is a spot where folks are able to say, hey, here's a situation, we're needing outreach to this location. So that is something that folks are able to kind of provide that information. We would love to have a connection point, whatever that would look like, with the city of La Center, so that we can coordinate and kind of identify what are the challenges that you're seeing, what are the supports that you're needing. And the other piece that I'm really excited about that we're moving towards is going off of essentially having Clark County broken up into a grid. And in that, we have teams that are assigned to each area, because it was the way that we were doing before, it was assigning encampments, but you can kind of think of how quickly that could become complicated, of how do you kind of track that, whether it is a camping ban or just because folks have moved to, I'm going to go over here or I'm headed over in this direction. So instead, we're just having locations. So there's more consistency in relationship building, both for the community as well as for the individuals that are there. So that is our goal with that. So that's the piece that we're transitioning into. So then there's a team that's set and able to provide that support.
So there's a field just south of City Hall in Vancouver where, when there was huge issues with camping on the streets and the sidewalks, folks were given a place to go. How often are you going through there and recontacting those folks?
So we have teams that are going out there regularly, multiple times a week.
Very good.
to the idea that people don't, some of the majority of people don't want help or help with housing. Sorry. Only 15% of the folks that called and asked for and qualified for housing programs in 2022 received it, just simply due to capacity.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of people out there asking for help every day and qualifying for it, and also there's just nowhere for them to go. So it's kind of, I mean, it's a commonly held belief, but it's actually like not supported by the data, that people don't want to help, that they don't want to go into shelter, that they don't want housing. People are calling every day, asking for help, and they're just, unfortunately, the answer is you qualify and we have to wait for an opening. Right now we have about 1,900 individuals who have qualified for permanent supportive housing, which is the highest level of need. These are people with physical disabilities and co-occurring mental health or substance use disorder diagnosis, and there's a wait list of 1,900 people. We just simply don't have a place.
Mhm.
And so when people don't have a place to be, and that's a home, they end up, outside.
I have a question. Is it a combination of folks, when you say qualify, some maybe don't have any income, or their income is so low that they don't really potentially have enough for housing, so then they would go into what would be considered a shelter, right? And then there's those folks you said, well, the rise of rent is going up and they're elderly. Well, they were paying something at one point. So did they get kind of pooled in? They need low income housing, and is that kind of how it's?
Yeah,
shuffled?
it's simply the people with low and very low incomes in our community can't find a place that they can afford to live.
So they're
And
still able
so-
to take some income revenue from those families. So it's not a complete charitable situation. Do you guys
Yeah.
talk to investors to say, if there was this much guaranteed rent, this is what these folks can afford, and this is
Yeah.
kind of a grant that you can get from the state? I mean, I'm sure those conversations are had. I mean,
I will say, so that's something that we have, so kind of thinking of from the perspective of like a landlord liaison.
Right.
It's kind of how
Yeah.
I would view that. So something that I'm looking into doing is developing, and it's something that Council for the Homeless has done, different agencies have done, but really just wanting to have a bit more coordination and going into kind of the private market of, okay, if the issue is affordable housing, are there ways for us to get people into housing and getting creative about that? I will say
Right,
often
and what
landlords are
tax
not going
strategies,
to
that they could do to help
often
those.
take if here's the percentage that we can cover, but how do we get creative and kind of get our folks into the market, and recognizing that we have very low rates of vacancies, getting really creative and working
So
with
has there been
landlords.
any type of lobbying on this from the other side of it? And what I mean by that is, not every rental unit is a huge out-of-state conglomerate that's just raising people's up. A lot of rentals are small businesses.
Yeah.
And just the increase in taxes in Clark County last year has made people's payments go up hundreds of dollars
Mhm.
into the thousands, depending on where people live. And as a person that owns a rental, you can't eat that. The rent has to go up.
Right.
And you can't give away
Right.
housing.
And that's what I was saying.
And so what kind of lobbying is your industry doing to get taxes lowered, to get fuel costs lowered? Because we could all benefit from 50, 60 cents less per gallon, because you said earlier, people get stuck because they can't buy gas. Well,
Yeah.
gas is expensive for all of us when we're paying
Absolutely.
$6 a gallon. It's ridiculous, but
Washington's one of the
it's
highest.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Basically.
cyclical issue
Yeah.
that I guess that's kind of what frustrates
Yeah.
me sometimes is there's
bark of
small
the wrong
business
tree.
owners who are being blamed for these high rent hikes. Well, they're getting it on the other side because
Yeah.
the county tax rate is going so high.
Absolutely. And I think that it is, I see that struggle with food food costs
Food too,
are,
yes,
food
absolutely.
is, my kids are getting to an age where I'm like, could you eat less? The bills are increasing. And I think that other pieces, like we absolutely recognize that. And also that advocating is, it will not just impact the folks that we're talking about today in your community, it will also impact all of us in this room of it is getting harder, things are getting more expensive, and gas, food, whatever those pieces are, absolutely will be impacting folks and perhaps
Yeah.
making it easier.
So my question is, with that 15 million in ARPA funds that Clark County received that were specifically set aside for addressing homeless issues, is there any of that money that's being spent on lobbying for cost of living, which is what is driving a lot of people out onto the street?
Well, I can say a couple of things. So as a nonprofit, we have to be careful with lobbying. So I will say that we are absolutely advocating every single conversation about the impact of increasing costs. So we will bang our drum on affordable housing and how hard it has become for folks that we're working with. And we will also talk about all of those other pieces that are impacting folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So real quick, I have a two-part question. When you guys are encountering people that are experiencing homelessness, what is an idea of the percentage rate that are on drugs?
So that has definitely become a more frequent conversation and question. I don't have data. I know that from teams and conversations, the impact of fentanyl is absolutely being seen and felt. We also have more folks that at a younger age are seeking assistance with addiction, feeling that they need it just at an earlier age, perhaps younger than historically we would have seen. And the other piece is we are seeing folks that are not using. So I know that is.
Is it 50%, 60%,
No,
70% that
I
you're
don't.
running
I
across?
don't know that we're seeing that. I haven't. It's kind of been word of mouth and folks talking about it. I know that it is a conversation that a lot of people are having. We track that information in HMIS, but it is based off of self-disclosure. So we aren't going to necessarily, that information, again, we are going to not be able to say, hey, without a doubt, this information would be accurate. It is information that we're looking into. I don't want to say this percentage and then you go, well, Sunny, on this date, you said this amount. And we are looking into it. So as soon as I have information that I am like, this feels legit, I will tell you.
Well, and one of the reasons I ask is because are you guys, when you put people into housing, is there UAs happening so people aren't using drugs during the time that they're receiving assistance from taxpayer dollars?
So that is dependent on the agency that is working with someone. So that is going to be varied based off what the program requirements are and the services that are being provided. So we have a lot of providers that their expertise is for folks, their money is coming specifically to provide supportive services to folks who are either navigating sobriety or that is what they're working on. So it really depends on the agency and the program requirements that are being provided. Health and safety is a really important piece, that everybody is able to be safe and healthy. And so that is a piece that every single agency is looking at.
Are you the only agency particularly that are helping the homeless? I mean, I went to an ECHO meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that was very interesting in trying to find daycare for people that have children. And I can see that that's a very sad situation there.
Absolutely.
But I know I have family in Minneapolis, and back in the 1980s, a woman named Mary Jo Copeland with 12 children opened first a small building, and then
Yeah.
people saw her heart in helping the homeless. And so she was able to get funding, and she fought hard for that and worked hard to help people. And that was more, well, it was a nonprofit, of course, but it was more a private enterprise. And I don't know if we even have anything like that in Vancouver area or Clark County.
So with that, the first question was, are we the only agency? So we are the entry point. So we're the agency that folks call kind of back in the early days of Council for the Homeless. It was, here's all the places you can call. So the idea of being that entry point is you're calling one agency as opposed to calling many agencies. So that's what our role is, and there are many agencies. We have 39 different agencies that are different housing providers and providing different services in the community, putting information into our HMIS, our homeless management information system. So any of the information you see on our website is going to come from those other providers as well. So it's absolutely not just Council for the Homeless. We're just kind of that entry point. And then with childcare providers, that is something that most definitely is conversations that I personally have been involved in a lot. I work very closely with the schools and the homeless student liaisons, as well as the FCRCs, so the family resource coordinators, and have for many years. And that has just, childcare has continued to be a huge challenge. And as was talked about in the presentation, that Clark County does not have that sort of, similar to Minneapolis, like we just don't have structures that are set up in that way, unfortunately.
Clark County actually answered that question that day at the ECHO meeting and stated that they have not put any money into childcare at that point. So.
But doesn't the state itself help with that? Washington State? Yeah,
Yeah.
you can qualify for state funding, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
I think we could spend hours on this. but-
Yeah.
It's a big topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Oh.
We would love to keep in touch, please. I mean, I'm available. Let's talk. Let's meet for coffee, and we can go through these numbers. I think if I could just leave you with one thing is that, a lot of times the most visibly homeless, the chronically homeless population, it's actually the smallest part of the homeless population, and the unseen folks, the families with kids, the people who have jobs, people who are underemployed, those folks are also people that we serve. So it's easy to recognize, a very visible piece of homelessness, but there's oftentimes this other side that no one's ever seen that, that's why we have to have a continuum of services that helps people as little as possible to help them resolve their homelessness all the way up to the greatest need. So.
Yeah, thank you. I will be meeting with Cessny, and we are going to be setting up contacts and such like that for the city. So it is happening. And you are right, homelessness is measured in multiple ways. From the ancien, from the family members that are staying on other family members' couches to, so it is definitely an issue that we have to address. So I do thank you today, Laura and Sunny. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is a solid waste management plan presentation. Joelle Loescher, did I do that? Did I say that right?
You did.
Will be presenting. Thank you.
Good evening, counselors. I'm the program manager for the solid waste operations team. I also have the solid waste education and outreach manager here too, in case you have more questions for our team. Our consultant, Doug Drennan with J.R. Miller, is going to be doing most of the presentation, but I wanted to introduce him first. We are in the process of updating our solid waste management plan. So we have a lot of fun, exciting things going on here in Clark County with solid waste. So we have a lot of issues that we wanted to talk about and a lot of things we want to address. But we're going to start small, and we're going to start just with the regional system study that we completed. So we completed this study in June of this year. We began the study in 2019. We completed the first phase in 2021. And so having completed this last phase, the study itself, Doug is going to get into on a more on a deeper level. But basically, we have the option with our current Columbia Resource contract for transfer and disposal of the transfer stations to purchase the transfer stations for $1. And the county's interested in having a joint ownership model. So as we explore that, and I went to our county council July to talk about this, and our council said, we want to make sure that you're reaching out to all of your cities and getting information on what they want to see and what they want to learn about this. So after Doug's presentation, I'll be available for Q&A as he will, and I want to make sure that I'm taking back your feedback to my council. And we're going to be releasing an RFP in January of next year to do a little deeper dive into what public ownership of the transfer stations would look like. So with that, I will pass it to Doug.
Thanks, Joelle. Well, it's hard to follow that up with garbage, but that's what we're here to talk about. So move on to the first thing. The agenda for tonight is really, I'll do a little overview of the solid waste system, some background history to give you some perspective. And then I'll summarize some of the key findings from the regional study. And one of the outgrowths of that is the decision to consider the ownership option. So I'll review that with you. And at the end, there's an opportunity to get your input into your thoughts and concerns for that, so that, as Joelle mentioned, the county can proceed. So a little overview of the solid waste system. Of course, the collection services are largely represented and handled by the cities themselves, either through a franchise agreement with you or through the UTC or in conjunction with the county. So a lot of the work that we did relates specifically to facilities and not necessarily to the collection services. But it's always important that whatever services you have, the facility's got to be there to accommodate that. And that's what the study was about. Every county and city in the state is required every 5 years to update their solid waste management plan. As Joelle mentioned, the county is the lead here, and you are ingratiated with that through your interlocal agreement to participate in and be represented in the solid waste management plan. And that's a call to look at the next 5 to 10 years of what things might be, services might be provided, as well as policies and other things. Most of what we're here to talk about is the transport and disposal and recycling system. Right now, it's managed by the county. It's owned and operated by, under contract with Columbia Resource Company, which is a subsidiary of Waste Connections. Again, the center is linked to that arrangement through your interlocal agreement. And through the whole process, the city is represented on both the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and I believe Brian's involved with the Regional Steering Committee. So that's a little background on the system. Next slide. Little history. The whole system got turned on its sides or turned over in the early 90s when new regulations came out. Local landfills were closed and waste had to be transported to regional landfills. So the two transfer stations, the central transfer station and West Van, were built in 1992. And when they signed that contract, the county said, well, once the system's paid for, we want the option to own it. So they put in a condition to purchase that for $1 each during that period. So that contract went on until 2006, when a third station was built on the east side to handle the east portion of the county at the city of Washougal. And part of the agreement was extended with that 1 year purchase, but the city of Washougal retained an option to possibly purchase that station. So as this started to mature, the county engaged in 2019 with doing a comprehensive study of the system, which included doing a condition assessment of the facilities. You know, these facilities were built in 1992, and here they are almost 30 years old. What condition are they all in? Do we have to rebuild them, or what's the condition? As part of that, the county is still in negotiations for continuing an ongoing completion of the operations, but while they're looking at the capital improvements and other investments. So the study went on for a couple of years. It was a very thorough study to not only look at the conditions, the main findings were that the primary structures at each of these transfer stations were in pretty good condition. Nothing was falling down. But at the same time, there had been no major improvements made. Basically, they kept them clean, but no improvements to handle more waste, more traffic. Just to give you perspective, between 2010 and 2020, when the census, the amount of waste generated in the county more than doubled. So that's almost tripled from when they were originally designed. Simply said, these facilities were not designed to handle this volume of waste. Most of the growth and most of the waste is going to the central transfer station, which is probably where La Centra goes. And that's where 60% of the county's waste goes, to that facility. I'll get into these north service options later, but one option is to expand that facility to handle that. Another option is to make minor improvements and do a new smaller station to be located. And the third option is to replace the whole thing. And I'll get into why that's important. Some additional findings. Next slide. Additional findings were, so we did all this comprehensive review. We spent time with looking at what improvements were being made. And so over the next 10 years, there's going to have to be $30 to $50 million spent to not only deal with current problems, but to meet that growth. Just, you may know this, Clark County between 2010 and 2020. Oh, and 2020. Hello?
There's people online.
Anyhow, 30 to me, but Clark County is the fastest growing county in the state between 2010 and 2020, and is projected to continue to be the fastest growing over Seattle and Spokane and those areas. Negotiations are ongoing with the county to continue operations while we consider these ownership. Some good news in this is that the revenues being generated through the current rates are assumed some reasonable margin of payment will result in having excess revenues to pay for capital improvement. That's good news. That's part of the negotiations that are currently being handled. So the current rates might be able to pay all the capital improvements if measured out. The ownership is still under consideration. So I'm just going to not go into details of this. This is CTR, the Central Transfer Station. You can see on the left, the main transfer station is only about 50,000. It's not big enough to handle all the waste. Traffic spills out. I don't know if you go there, but traffic spills out on the 503 all the time. They've done some minor improvements, but the facility just is not able to handle the traffic. Now, there is property behind the site that is not part of the ownership issue. It's owned separately. As a remedial action to alleviate the traffic problem in the drawing on the right, you see there's a blue line. That's a new circulation to add scales and to at least a stopgap measure to improve circulation, improve operations, and make it a little safe. It still will not take care of the long-term issues. So one option is to do a major expansion to that facility shown on the left. The facility would have to be built onto the back property. There's negotiations. The property used to be in a rural area. There's houses around it right now and apartments that look down on it. So the character of the neighborhood has changed quite a bit. So expanding that is questionable. The county is also looking at possibly limiting the access there and building a smaller station to handle more of the general public. And maybe that might be located further north. We don't know, but that's one of the studies that they're doing. The third option is this is not a good location long-term, and build a whole new facility. So those are the three options. And that's what causes that 30 to 50 million. If you build a whole new station, it's going to cost more. So that creates that gap.
Why wouldn't you just expand the current one down by Vancouver Lake, where the properties?
Next one.
Okay.
So the main station is the west van. So the question of why not to do that is it's a long haul down there. It's a time and effort.
But doesn't the garbage and the trash go out on the barges
It
there every 2
does.
days?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
What comes out of CTR. And that is certainly a possibility. So right now, looking at the left-hand picture, you'll see the transfer station, you'll see the material recovery, the MRF. So one of the things that CRC is planning to do is remove that equipment that does processes all your recyclables, move that to a whole new location. If that occurred, then that whole building will become available on the left side. So this site has 21 acres. It is a mainstay of the system. There's other services that can be provided there. Right now, they're doing wood waste and yard waste, but there's a new law that's been passed recently that says all yard waste and food waste to try to get food waste out of the system by 2030. And so the need to handle more organics is going to be a demand, something you'll be struggling with here in the next few years. And so this facility is probably the opportunity to increase and improve the operations to provide those services.
And we were just awarded money for a new crane down there at the port for loading that garbage and stuff up, right? Isn't that, did I hear something about that?
You may be right.
Yeah.
I mean, the barge facility and barge handling is a very valuable asset. I mean, in Metro transports by truck, and up there in Tacoma, or I mean, Seattle, they do by train. But the barge has been very economical, and it's got, benefits to, to the port here. But because they get the backhaul of grain and other stuff, that backhaul, it makes this a very affordable option. So the barging is a very cost-effective way to go.
And where does the garbage go after that?
It goes to the Finley Buttes landfill in Boardman, Oregon.
Okay.
So they transport it up there, and that's where they interchange the containers, and that's a landfill owned by Waste Connections.
Okay.
There are two other landfills up there, but I won't get into it. But that was part of the original contract with Tidewater Barge, who built this original facility and sold it over to Waste Connections. So on the right, you'll see the master plan for this. You'll see all these colors, which shows a phasing. Keep in mind that when we have to expand these buildings and things, we can't stop services. So you have to phase all these improvements in. That's a positive because you don't spend all the money at once. You make these improvements at a time. So that phase development plan was done in conjunction with the operators and as part of the capital improvements. But it is a great opportunity, as you brought up. The third station is the Washougal station. On the left, it's a small station. It's only 5,000 square feet. Again, traffic backs out onto the public right of way. It's just not designed to handle that. So a capital improvement plan was made. You'll see there yellow to expand the access lane for the commercial, improve circulation, and a whole new building to handle the waste. But the good news is that site can accommodate this, and it would accommodate for the next 20 years. So look, that's a background of the capital improvements that need to be made over the system over the next 10 years. Next slide. So now we get to the ownership issue. So in the phase one study, we were asked to take a look at what are the options, the current situation with private ownership, private operation, public ownership, private operation, public ownership with some public operation like the scale houses and so on, or public ownership and public operation. I will tell you that these relationships vary for every jurisdiction, and just in the Northwest, all of those are working successfully. Each jurisdiction decides what's the best formula for their operation. So there's advantages and disadvantages to each of these. Next slide. So there was a set of criteria that were developed in the phase one report to look at capital improvements. That is the ability to control when investments are made. And, just take a look at right now, these facilities should have had some investments made, but there's no need to spend money if you don't have to. I'll put that as an editorial. Span of control, when decisions are made, when you implement programs, management experience, the ability to manage and administrate the services provided through the utility. Next slide. We looked at ownership risk. What risk do you assume if you're taking ownership of the facility? and what risk can be passed on to the contractor. And then finally, the regulatory options, the ability to make decisions and affect decisions that, local jurisdictions are totally by federal law responsible for all solid waste services. So you are the controller. So having that regulatory control and policy options is part of the analysis. So in the end, we produced this report. Next slide. It looked at these. It looked at the advantages and disadvantages. They all have their positives, negatives. And finally, we presented the contrasting the challenges and presented the report to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, the Steering Committee, and I'm not sure all the meetings that were done. And the result of that was, the next slide, was a set of guiding principles of what should we be considering? Should be our principles for moving forward? And it was pretty much established that a regional agency that had representation of all cities and all participating jurisdictions would be the best model. It should be an independent entity that had separate powers and authority from one government. The governing board should be elected officials appointed by each of the jurisdictions, and the board should have a total authority to set rates and also finance through revenue bonds. And it would be independent of the county and the city. So these were guiding principles. So the next slide, under the revised code of Washington, there's 4 basically jurisdictions or formulas under the chapters to execute this. Interlocal Cooperation Act is really more of if 2 jurisdictions want to build a storm sewer system and who operates, and it's going on both jurisdictions, how do you do it? It's really more of a operation agreement. The joint municipal utility service is really more of an independent utility. You might be familiar with the Discovery Clean Water Alliance. That's an example of the JMUS. That's the Clean Water Alliance between Ridgefield and the city of Battleground to operate the sewer system. The Metropolitan Municipal Corporation is a separate organization, separately elected body like the Clark Regional Wastewater System. And a disposal district is really an agreement between the county and the city to commit waste to certain options and agreement to participate. But it's really an arm of the lead jurisdiction, whether it be a county or a city. So when you look at these options and what met the criteria, the JMUS was the organization that met these guiding principles. It is made up of board members from elected officials that are appointed. It's operated as an independent public utility. Revenues, no tax money, revenues generated from rates pay for the services. Facilities are publicly owned, and you can contract them out, or you can operate them yourself or operate part of them. In the case of the Discovery Alliance, the Clark Regional is a participant in the agency, and they operated as a contractor. But they could decide we're going to put it out for bid and operate it separately, but that's the way they chose to do it. And the agency does, under the statutes, allow to sell revenue bonds. So the recommendations from that phase 1 and looking at these in the phase 2 was to pursue available options to contract for the purchase of the facilities for $1. So continue to look at that. There is a preference for publicly owning, but privately operating, taking advantage of the private sector to operate facilities. CRC has done a good job of keeping the facilities, but they do get paid for it, so let me tell you that. And the regional system can be contracted further under further evaluation. And again, a preference to do more studies on the JMUS model and how it can be work best for your community. So that was the recommendation going forward. Next slide. So the next steps were.
I hate to do this to you, but we do have to post our pause here with the work session. We will be going into City Council, and then we will be coming back to finish with your presentation.
You have time for 2 more minutes?
I've got to do this on time.
All right.
I am sorry.
That's fine.
Just be a few minutes.
I'll just leave you with,
No,
You can finish.
We're coming back to you.
oh.
Yes,
okay.
we're coming back to you.
Okay.
We gotta start our meeting
Okay,
and then
thank you.
pause it. All right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we weren't kicking you out. All right. You guys ready? Do I need to close the work session or just pause it? At that point, we're good? Okay, just as I did. All right. Okay, clerk, can we please start the recording? All right. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, and I'd like to call today's city council meeting to order. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Clerk, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Fox,
Present.
Councilmember Casberg,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle,
Here.
Councilmember Leha,
Present.
Councilmember Cerveny,
Present.
I don't think they are on.
Mayor Strobin.
Yes, here. Thank you. All right, for those who are just joining, we're going to go ahead and pause the city council meeting and resume the work session. It seems to be about 2 to 3 minutes to wrap it up at that point. Do I have to ask for any objections or anything? Okay, we're good. No votes? All right. If you'd like to continue, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. So the next steps, as Joel said, is our job right now is to get some input from you on the Janus model, your thoughts, concerns. And these are issues that will then be folded into looking at and answering those questions and providing information to help you make some decision. The consultant results will come back with findings and recommendations that will come back to you as a city to review and endorse or change, and then make final recommendations to the county. So I would like to leave you with a few things we've already done. We've been to the city of Battleground and we've been to the city of Camas, so I'll let you be aware of a couple of things that they've raised. One question is, why should we own these? And certainly we'll expound on that, but one of the issues is just the value of it. You're looking at 50 million plus assets for $3. So that's one way to look at it. The other thing is just having more control over the ratepayers and what the services are. So there can be different opinions on that, but that's just a couple quick answers to that. Representation of the board would be skewed to the largest participating. This was a big issue with Battleground. I guess they're, concerns with either C-Tran or something where they got one seat and the city's got 12. I don't know the formula that they have, but that's a concern of making sure that one vote for each representation or whatever the formula, and certainly that would be part of the study. In the case of the Discovery Alliance, each of the participating jurisdictions have a single vote on the board. So that's how that's set. The formula is not written in law, so it's arbitrary to your decision. What happens to collection services and rates? Well, at this point, it's still, there's no change there. The idea of the JAMUS is really the operation of the facilities and to take advantage of getting the best contract for all the waste. If you went out and bid your contract out for collection for disposal, you wouldn't get as good a deal as if you got it all through the city. So that collection services and those rates are still the authority of the city. At the city of Camas, the biggest concern is making sure that whatever's put forward addresses how ratepayers are protected in any ownership. And one of the counselors made a point, says, I really don't, he says, I kind of favor private ownership, but I want control of the money. So no matter what comes out, I want control of those capital dollars, when they get spent and how they get spent. So I just want to share with you those comments and then open it up for any questions you have. Joelle can answer any questions also. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Not at this time.
Good presentation. Thank you.
That's a great presentation. I do favor the ownership or the publicly owned, and then maybe privately operated.
Yeah, I realize this all comes at you. I guess you can get your comments to Brian and there's still some time to get some thoughts in. So.
Okay,
after
we
you
definitely
think
will
about
do
it.
that.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, with that, I'd like to continue the city council meeting at 6:35 p.m. Clerk, can you please call up any public audience, comments from the audience, please?
Melissa Flatt,
Melissa Flatt, Listener United. Just here with a couple announcements. We have scheduled our legislative training for November 13th, so everybody's welcome if you have constituents who want to attend, so they can learn how to make a difference in the whole legislative process. That'll be the 10 days after voting, I think. Do we vote on the 3rd and the 7th? I don't know.
It is the 7th.
So that'll be November 13th, 5:30 p.m. in the community center. This weekend, Saturday, 10 to 2, drug take back at the police station here in town. Anything can be dropped off. We'll have lock boxes available. We will hand those out. We were asking for a donation if you're able. If not, we'd rather just get lock boxes out to everybody in the community so they can lock up their medications. And then November 18th is a go from 9 to noon with breakfast and pictures with Santa. That'll be held at the elementary school cafeteria. We will have pancake, sausage, fruit, some crafts, some dancing with the elves, and then, of course, pictures with Santa. And I think that does it through December.
What was the date there again?
November
Melissa?
18th.
No, I mean
And
for the drug take back.
Drug take back is the 28th. It's this Saturday.
The 28th. Do we have that up on the sign currently? Okay,
It
thank
has
you.
been for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
And
now, so
what
thank
time
you
is
for
that? Melissa,
Way to keep
what
your eyes
ti-
on the road.
what time is the
Texting,
November
sorry.
18th?
The breakfast with Santa is from 9 to noon.
9.
Yes. And that'll be, that's also just donation based. It'll be no charge. If you'd like to make a donation,
Oh,
we'll
that's
gladly
great.
accept it to the 501c3.
That's great.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Justine Stimmel,
Hello, my name is Justine Stimmel, and I'm a List Center resident. And today in history, we gained a new Speaker of the House in the U.S. Congress, finally. So this is exciting because greatness can occur at the federal levels and trickle down to our states and local governments. His name is Mike Johnson from Louisiana. He said, "We are one republic even with the bitter partisanship going on, people are losing faith in their government. We have an opportunity to preserve it based on trust, transparency, and accountability." In his 20-minute speech, he went on to say that God raises up those in authority, and we each have to use that gift to serve people. Speaker Mike Johnson went on to also share the importance of the 7 core principles of conservatism. They are, number 1, individual freedom; 2, limited government; 3, the rule of law; 4, peace through strength; 5, fiscal responsibility; 6, free markets; and 7, human dignity. I share this because it's important. You and I, we are the stewards of these principles. And all of these principles align with who I know Myrna Leha to be. So thank you, Myrna. I encourage the City of La Center to elect and retain Miss Councilmember Myrna Leha. We must all weigh in to vote and help her to remain on the council and to vote on Election Day coming up, November 7th, right around the corner. So get your ballots out before November 7th. And I'd just like to say a few kind words about Myrna, because I appreciate her. As you know, she was appointed here, but maybe not all the city's residents know that yet. Myrna has exceeded many of our expectations this far. She is the most capable to serve us.
Ma'am, we cannot use the city hall, a public facility, in aid of a campaign. So
Oh, I'm
no
just,
speeches
I'm
in favor of a
appreciating a
candidate.
council member.
So, thank you.
I'm just saying thank you to Myrna for serving on the council.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you don't want me to talk about that. Okay, so, well, how about I say this? I have thoroughly enjoyed the camaraderie and respect amongst the entire council with Myrna in the seat. She is positioned to excel and lead La Center in great ways. Thank you for your time and each of you for serving the city of La Center and our small town that I love so much. God bless each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. During attorney's comments, can you address that just so people understand? During attorney's comments, is that okay?
Yeah, I can address
Okay,
that,
yeah,
sure.
Please, thank you. Clerk, any other comments?
Alphila,
Al Filla, 152 West 15th Street. First thing I want to do, I want to make a shout out to, I guess he was referred to as an icon of the city of La Center, named Don Anderson. You know, he's in the hospital now, and well, I'm sure he's going to recover. But I want to, you know, just say, get well, Don. Okay, and then come to the lesser thing here. I was looking at the budget, and we've got a code enforcement officer, a brand new position that we're going to pay big bucks for. Give me a break. Do we really need a code enforcement officer? I realize we've been working on the codes and everything, you know, but you know, does the city of the center want people looking over your backyards, counting your buffaloes? Wasn't Casey the one with the buffaloes? Oh, well.
You have to have less than 5.
Less than 5. You know, I mean, you know, in this time of budget, you know, and I'm a fiscal conservative, you know, can we really afford a code enforcement officer? Do we want one? And I guess you know what I think. Thank you. God bless America.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Any public comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Skip doesn't have to fill out the card.
Well, I didn't get, my name's Skip Carlson. I am.
No.
I live at 35915 Northwest Jenny Creek Road. And this, I just kind of got inspired to come up. Councilor member Cheers and Jeers from the local, a couple of Cheers things. Had a couple of weeks ago, found a vehicle, abandoned vehicle out there on Paradise Park Road, and called it into Cressa. Cressa responded, and the Cowlitz tribal police came out, and they just did a fabulous job, along with Richfield. Really great response. So there's a cheers. Cheers to Public Works. I finally drove after dark here a while back, which I haven't been driving after dark, and those reflectors are absolutely great. There's another cheers. And cheers to the La Center Wildcats. They're 8-0 and looking at quite possibly going an undefeated season. The final game is going to be this Friday in Castle Rock. That's a big deal in high school football. And the last thing I want to touch base on, and this is me, but we as a community continue to make reference to the community center out there. And one of my, for me, it's a kind of a burr under my saddle belt. For anybody who's been here for any time, it's the Wheel Club. And I guess where I'm coming from on this, I'd like to see us refer to it lest we forget our history. I think it's really important for a community to remember who they are, what they are, and remember their history. So it's a suggestion is all. The Wheel Club Community Center. I think it's really important to keep that stuff in mind. And with that, I'm going to hush up. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Skip.
Thanks, Skip.
If there are any public comments from those calling in, please press *6 to unmute yourselves and speak state your name. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim, did you want to speak? Oh, sorry.
Good evening, council members and citizens. I'm Jim Irish, 1653 East Heritage Loop, with Center, Washington. And we've all gone through the trying times of the road construction on the northbound and the diversion of traffic up through Pacific Highway. Well, that's finished. Things have slowed down on the massive amount of traffic going up Pacific Highway and through the center. But 2 days ago, or Friday, I should say, last Friday, I was stopped at 10th and Pacific Highway for 17 minutes because there was 2 cars in front of me. One wanted to make a left turn, and the other one behind him was sitting there yelling. But anyway, the number of cars coming south on Pacific Highway were going not at a slow pace. We're going normal 25 miles an hour or thereabouts. But the amount of traffic for that 17 minutes was continuous. There was no allowing people to cut in, which fine, because they have the right. But it brings back a memory, and I was going to talk with Brian about the Public Works Director about this, and Tony Cooper. Way back when we were looking at the impact of the roads, Pacific Highway, et cetera, going north and south, because of the development of the Case Addition, the Poteet Addition, and et cetera, of the new growth coming into the city at that time, we were looking at another way, should anything happen to the bridge or to the traffic flow, that we would be going to Battleground and a long way around to get out of the city of the center. Being a conscientious citizen and a safety conscientious emergency preparedness person, we strongly, where's Mr. Spoon? Anyway, we did looking at a diversion of coming off of Pacific Highway right there at before you come in by Kay's Addition, and cutting off and cutting down, going across the river and coming back up the other side and diverting traffic 2 ways. That would have brought us onto the center highway going out to the intersection. Except for there was that's where the gas pump is. That's where our gas line comes in. And everything dropped. Council dropped it at the time because, that's insurmountable. Well, I'd like to strongly suggest that the council and Public Works, if possible, relook at the situation, getting another road to go out there, and I'm through with my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. And just so you know, we are exploring other options of routes in the city. Any public comments from those calling in, please press *6 to unmute yourselves. State your name and address.
Hello, this is
Hello,
Kimberly
can you hear me?
Goldman Albin.
Oh, please go ahead.
Am I able to speak? My turn?
Yes.
Yes, Kimberly, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've had a real long day and stuff, so I'm just going to kind of cut in here. You know, we need to stop the Growth Management Act, the GMA. Clark County did not have to get involved with it, and the cities, I believe, have a chance to get out of it. We have a heritage of a country setting. This is a little community. A lot of people, it's kind of weird, but they moved to little communities because it's so cute, and then they build them up and make them populated, overpopulated. And that's what's happening now. I don't like it. I think there's plenty of other places to live. Anyway, I also want to make a point that when you have a citizen's public comment, I will be very surprised if we can't say something about a candidate. consider that under free speech, but I guess we'll be hearing from the attorney soon. Also, it looks like that La Center has a police department, yet no police. I understand that we'll be hiring the Cowlitz Tribal Police Department. God bless them, and hope they're going to be doing a good job. But it sounds like a lot of middlemen. When we get big government, everybody can see that they're piling in new jobs here, new jobs there. Really, nothing getting done, but they're making a lot of hard-earned tax dollars put into their pockets. So I do want to get out of the GMA. I think the city can do that. Also, I'm asking citizens to watch or listen to geoengineeringwatch.org. We're polluting the hell out of our earth, and we need to be educated and educate the citizens as to how to take care of our earth. It's not doing very well. Also listen to Radio FM 101.1 and AM Radio 890. That's 860. And listen to those daily. You'll be hearing the truth about a lot of things that people don't understand what's going on here in the world today. So I guess I just wanted to, also, I'm seeing that we're going to be tying into the Sheriff's Department. I used to respect the Sheriff's Department. I can't trust, not the people themselves, but the entity, as Clark County unelected boss Kathleen Otto owns the Clark County Sheriff's Office and the jail system, and I don't really care much about that. So let's stop the growth in La Center. We can stay a little community and be happy. We don't have to be big like that. And the fact is that I think the city gets monies to take this stuff on, and we don't need that. We want to stop it. Don't follow along with our corrupt, what I call tyrannical local government here in Clark County. Vancouver is, of course, as you well know, the United Nations member for 16 years, and that's what this is all about. They're taking our hard-earned tax dollars and distributing them amongst themselves, making new jobs and policies and this and that. Thank you. God bless America. Let's make America godly again.
Thank you, Kimberly. Any other public comments? Call it in. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. State your name and address.
Hello, this is Andrew Rockwell, and can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Hello, council members. My name is Andrew Rockwell, and I'm here on behalf of Rodney and Kathy Peterson, who live along Northwest Pacific Highway in La Center, Washington. I'm in attendance here this evening to request the City Council support for the MDR code adoption that I believe is being discussed later. In particular, we are supportive of the aspect of the code amendment pertaining to product mix. Currently within the MDR 16 code, smaller projects are required to provide a mix of multifamily product within a single subdivision. And overall, this kind of disrupts the neighborhood feel of the single family nature, or at least gives you the option to preserve it, and greatly reduces, the possibility that projects can be financially feasible at the end of the day. So we are in support of raising the minimum gross acreage from 5 to 10 acres. Because this will allow the Peterson property in particular to provide more of a seamless expansion to kind of the existing Riverside estates and not have to necessarily insert a multifamily product, therefore preserving the single family nature of the neighborhood. Regarding the other aspects of the code, it's my understanding that the proposed density transfer is a generally accepted and permitted process in many jurisdictions throughout the state. And it's also my understanding that much of the usable lands analysis considers the gross acreage of properties that is ultimately impacted by critical areas later in the process. So this means that we should be able to, work towards doing everything we can to preserve these densities within zones that are already zoned for this type of product. So overall, I think this code amendment is a proactive step from the city to help address development challenges and to just simply provide more flexibility for single family efforts. So thank you for the time and the consideration, and I will summarize my comments there.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Calling in, please press *6 to unmute yourself. State your name and address. Clerk, are there any public comments to be read?
No.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? That's you guys, council.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you, council. We do have a presentation tonight with the La Center School District update. Superintendent Peter Rosenkrantz will give us the update. Peter?
Thank you. I do have
Homework?
What I have for you is the presentation from last night. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I have some highlights. There's a data pack and there's also a slide deck. I just wanted to highlight a couple points out of the State of the District address that occurred last night. And all these documents are available on our website as well. There's a significant amount of good news to share. I've been standing up here talking about the data for quite some time. There's some specific components in here that talk about the data and how well it's going. If you could switch this, or the next slide. So career ready, this is a key component beginning with the end in mind. We focus on grade 13, which is an odd saying because everybody talks about grade 12 and you want to graduate. And what's missed is the next step. What do I do next? And if we can change our vernacular around, the milestone of a high school graduation is amazing. And the next step is also amazing, and we need our students prepared for that. So grade 13, career ready, not career in college. Career in college does a major disservice to opportunities for our kids. Only about 35% of our kids go on to college, and 65% of our kids don't. And it's not that college is bad, it's just there's other options, and our kids need to be aware of that. And so highlighting the trades is important. And we do have, I've talked about this before, but 84 students in a construction class that we didn't, 3 construction classes we didn't have in the past. And we had 3 AP courses last year. This year we have 8. So we're pushing both construction trade and college options. And some of it mixes. I mean, I have kids that are going off to Oregon State to become go into construction management. I mean, they do blend together. The whole idea is to give our kids a significant eye-opening to what lays ahead for them. If you could go to slide 5. That one. Thank you. This is a letter I had sent home, this data set, and in the data packet is the actual letter and data set. This is called cohort data. So if you take a look at, say, the 5th grade, English Language Arts, that's ELA, the 41% meeting standard is when they were 4th graders. The 56% meeting standards is when they're 5th graders. So that growth of 15% is huge. The fact of the matter is that 56% of our kids meeting standard is not acceptable. We're continuing to grow, but that's a result of a shutdown of school systems when COVID happened and our kids missing out on significant reading instruction. So if you switch, go to the next one, please. So the Columbian published an article, it's linked here. It talks about reeling from the pandemic, and they focus in on Evergreen, Battleground, and Vancouver. They use they look at a one data point system. So they say Evergreen on the scores, it represents math for Evergreen's like 40%. And they're saying all 22,000 students in Evergreen, 40% is their number for what they do in math. It's not a fair number to take a look at. One number that represents 22,000 kids makes no sense. Same thing for us. We have 1,700 kids, and if you have one number represent what happens for math, it's not right. But if you go to the next slide, this is also in your data packet. I use the analogy, the same method the Columbian used, and I just did with our high school. So our high school, one data point, our reading score is 80.6% of our students are proficient in reading. If you do our whole school approach, it's only 50% of our kids meeting standard. But the last test they take, something that our whole system has had input on, 80.6%. We went from last year of number 5 in the county of all high schools to number 2 in the county this year. And the only one that beat us is Camas, and they came down to us because their scores dropped, and we came up to them because our scores grew. Hawkinson beat us out in the growth. This is sort of by average growth. They seem to have a good deal going with math and science, but we're outpacing with reading. This year we're moving to math. We moved from number 5 in the county to number 4 for our high school for math, and that's what we're focusing on this year in addition to reading. Math and reading are those 2 cornerstone areas. We cannot, we're so busy focused on those, really, and of course social studies and science and all those other components, but we're really putting emphasis in the reading and math, because without those baseline skills, our kids are sunk. And we really need to make sure that we're on top of it. So if you go to...
I just got to tell you, Peter, that those are outstanding numbers.
To
rise that high, that's unheard of.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We have an amazing team, and our teachers are phenomenal. Our administrators are phenomenal. Our families are phenomenal. If you use a football analogy, I need offense, defense, and special teams. I can win with 2, but I can't win a championship. If I have all 3, we're going to win a championship. We have a good team in the system. We have amazing kids. We have amazing families. And we can win championships with that. This will keep going up because the work we're doing, which is really hard work, but it's the right work for our kids.
Was part of Hawkinson's success because of a former employee there that might work for us now?
Part of their success?
Yeah. So in the future, I think our school district may be able to top that.
Oh, we'll top that. We're somewhat competitive. Just saying. Wait, and I know Steve Marshall, their superintendent. I will call and rib him over this. But we're continuing to grow. And if you switch to slide 8, there's been significant voice. Keep going. It starts with people want to be an LC. This particular data is near and dear to my heart because I had a lot of people throw accusations about people don't want to come here, all the controversy around all the work we did last year. What they didn't realize is we maintained our focus on reading, writing, math, and science, and families, right? And that works. Enrollment, we're up 84 students. Strong family focus on academics. Student teachers, we have 5 student teachers. We're full. We're not taking anymore. Hiring, I talked about this earlier, the number of applicants we're getting, and staff member separations. Well, people are leaving in droves. Well, in 21-22, we had 37 separations, retirements, resignations, different things like that. This year we had 26. I mean, the data doesn't play out. And to that end, if you go back, slide 8, go back a couple. Again, one more. There. We use an iceberg analogy. Iceberg analogy, if you know, icebergs are visible. They have a very visible surface, but there's a significant amount underneath. It's not hidden. We're not hiding this, but it's just typically not seen. So if you take a look at last year, what was visible was we had an all-student focus. There was controversy, news coverage, policy work. That was very visible. What folks may not have seen is the reading, writing, math, science, PE, art, CTE, mission-critical work, family work. Now to seeing the next layer down, which have been professional development, shared leadership teams working with our teachers to build a leadership capacity to grow within our own. And then that 4th layer is implementation of the professional development, which then we can get the scores, take the training we're using and get, and the scores aren't as important as kids reading, because once they can read, they have access to everything around them. So That is key when we start looking at some of what happened last year. Out of the chaos, some of the perceived chaos, you would think, wow, the scores would tank. They didn't. We grew because we maintained our focus. So if you go all the way to the last slide, sorry. Bottom line, state of the district is strong, and we're going to continue improving. And our goal is to maintain strong connections with families, strong connections with our kids, and keep them engaged in the learning they need to become productive adults. So, any questions?
I just have a quick little story from, I was FaceTiming with my son on the way here. I wasn't driving, don't worry. And he wasn't focusing on what I was doing, and I thought he was playing video games or on his iPad or something like that. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know? And he's like, well, I'm reading. I'm like, oh, what are you reading? He's like, well, I'm reading this book called The Titanic. I Survived the Titanic, 19 whatever year that was. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. You know, he's like, yeah, it's a graphic novel. And he's in second grade. And mind you, last year we were just focused on sight words and, you know, like just being able to recognize words. And like now, like we're this early on in the school year, and he's like telling me he's reading a graphic novel. And, you know, it was really, I was just like blown away. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. Those stories we hear time and time again. My kid used to hate reading. Now they love it. That is like, yes. We sold out. In the last book fair, we sold out 3 times. We had to keep getting supplies. They stopped. They're like, no, we can't send you anymore. What do you mean you can't send it? Our kids want books. Bring it. Let's go.
Not just posters and pens.
Yeah, that too. You know,
Yeah.
anything that gets them reading.
Yeah, totally. I know. Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Thank you for being able to share. I'm just very proud of the work we're doing.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Peter. We're
Serving.
very glad that you are a regular here.
Very thankful. Very thankful.
And yes, Wildcats football's ranked #1 in the state. We can stay. And volleyball team is killing it as well as soccer. All 3 are going, and cross country. All 4 are going on to state.
It's amazing.
And postseason. So.
Nice. Love it.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
It's great to hear the community is alive and thriving. All right. Okay. Mayor's report. I do want to remind people it is Halloween, so kids are going to be out in full force. Please drive careful and be alert. Kids aren't always the safest in society as they run out in front of cars and such like that. So please watch your speed. And Friday, October 27th is the creature crawl at the elementary school. If anybody needs any information about that, please reach out to the La Center Lions. And I think that's it for tonight. Attorney's report.
Thank you. So to follow up on our public comment issue, there is a state law that prohibits the use of public facilities in aid of a ballot measure or a campaign for public office. And that law defines what public facilities are, and it defines it very broadly. It's any facility, building, equipment, stationery, computers, reader boards, employees, anything that is publicly owned can't be used for a ballot measure for or against or a person running for a public office. And so the question is, well, what about public comment? We don't have a policy that restricts what people can talk about during public comment. So why can't I talk in support of a candidate running for office? And the reason is that this building, our facilities, the broadcast of our hearing, these are all public facilities. And so you can't use them to support a campaign. And Melissa, I don't fault you for not knowing this restriction. I'm sorry?
RCW. What RCW?
Oh, it's RCW 4217A 555. Sure. This exact issue came up a few years ago when I was a Vancouver city attorney. And this statute it's enforced by a state agency called the Public Disclosure Commission. And I reached out to the PDC, is what we call it by, and asked a specific question about commenting during public comment. And got the answer from them as well that no, you cannot use this forum in aid of a campaign.
Does that include community center or anything like that that's also city owned?
Yes, it does. Fire stations, even taking your candidate picture with fire, station equipment. So any public facility. The only exception I would say is you can use a public building for like a candidate forum where all candidates are invited. It's open to all candidates. It's announced ahead of time. Everybody has equal access to it. That's about the only exception.
And also during appointments, right? Because during appointments, people are getting up and voicing their support for which candidates.
Yeah, there's a specific, I mean, that's technically appointing is not a campaign for public office, okay. But yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not her manager or anything like that, but she's doing a really good job.
There's several council members doing a good job, and so
okay.
Thank you.
We have to move on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the attorney on that matter? Council?
No. Anything else?
All right. Do you have anything else you would like to discuss
No,
tonight?
I won't be with you next meeting, but I look forward to seeing you at the meeting after that.
All right. Next up,
Who's
council.
our fill-in?
Oh.
Who's our fill-in?
Where am I going?
Who's our fill-in?
Oh, it will be either Sean or David.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. Next up, council member comments. Council member Fox.
Hello, good evening. Is this on? I feel like it's not sounding normal. Okay. I just want to make sure because it doesn't sound right to my ear, but great.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe something was off. You're having a hard time. Testing. Okay, so we just have to talk really close to it, what I think is abnormal about it from times past. Okay, good evening. Glad to see so many people here. I have a few comments I just want to say. As Skip, thank you for the Wheel Club comment. I love that so much. I think the best thing about being from such a beautiful small town is keeping nostalgia alive. And I think it's a really, when I grew up here, it was the Wheel Club, and you come through and, you have other folks, that as young college kids come back and they want to raise families, they come back here and too much has changed and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I think keeping some of the historical pieces is a beautiful way to grow and expand. So thank you for that. I love that idea. Also, I just want to thank Mr. Rosenkrantz for a beautiful presentation and just recognizing the growth and the all the adversity that the school districts across the county and across the entire world have faced. But, obviously this is what we can control right here, and all our power is in the now and not looking back and trying to say, what we could have done differently because we'd never experienced something like that. But I think, you attributing it to your entire team and recognizing that, it's down to this, the office staff ladies. I mean, they're amazing. Every single one of them. I mean, they're informed. They know their jobs. That they're like nurses. They're doing 80% of the work, and running that school. And that gives you guys administrators the opportunity to free up and do other things that you guys are that you have the control over to direct and guide the rest of everybody. And management is the most important thing when you're in a team. So, and I think that the move to having two principals at the elementary school, one for K through second, and then the other one for third through fifth, that was an amazing move because I think that really helps. I've seen that with those administrators being able to just focus more on a smaller amount and have more control over the outcomes instead of just constantly trying to, put your finger on, all of these burning fires that they have distributed that. And I really like that. So I just want to say thanks for that. The scores are looking great. Let's talk to Hawkinson, find out what math they're doing. I'm curious. But other than that, Halloween, let's all be safe and happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Casper.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been pretty quiet over the last couple of meetings, so I'll change that a little bit tonight. Yeah, I want to second what Councilmember Fox said about the school district. It is a very amazing district and something to be really proud of here in our community. And I really appreciate what Skip got up and talked about, you know, even though it was kind of an afterthought, but it's the kind of things that need to be said. That being said, there's things that are going to be on the agenda for later tonight that are not going to make everybody happy, but they're also, we have to consider as a council what is best for the community as a whole, and at the same time not forgetting where we came from, honoring the history of Le Center. You know, I think it would be a great idea to either name the community center, put a sign up, or even put a plaque up that talks about what the history of that building is, so that it's memorialized in that way. You know, there's a lot of talk on social media where people don't understand the whole context of what's going on, but they still have to feel like they need to make context or comments on that. And you know, a lot of those criticisms just aren't fair, and people don't go to the school board update and listen to what the actual information is. You know, they take one little specific data point and want to focus on that. So I would just like to encourage everybody to look at the whole package, not just whatever it is that irritates them at the particular moment. You know, progress has to happen. That's how towns dry up across, you know, we haven't seen it in our lifetime, but you go through Central and Eastern Oregon and there's a lot of towns that they're gone. The buildings are there. It's just a shell. And, you know, if the city of Le Center doesn't progress, if we don't do things that allow us to afford to have services like law enforcement, like fire, like improving the roads, looking at possibly the improvement projects on East 4th Street, well, then everything suffers. You know, we wouldn't be able to have the success that we have in the Le Center School District if it weren't for the growth that we're having right now. So, you know, it's not going to make everybody happy, and I get that. I do respect everybody's opinion, and they should be able to share it as they want. But I can tell you that I'm pretty confident that this current council is looking out for the best interests of the whole city. We don't want to forget the history. We don't want to forget where we came from. But you know what? There's going to be some apartment buildings built, and it's not going to make everybody happy. But without that, we just can't. You can't have what we have now unless you keep improving that. And you know, again, we haven't seen towns in this area dry up, but the way we were going there for a while, it was a possibility. So anyway, thank you for coming. I appreciate everybody that shows up and saying their comments, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyle.
Good evening. Well, I don't really have a whole lot to say, but I do appreciate what my fellow council members up here have said tonight, you know, reiterating about talking about our school district. I mean, I just felt like I've heard a lot of positivity tonight for the most part, and that's been really good to hear. I think we got to, you know, focus on that. And, you know, people trusted us to come up here and do this and make decisions for everyone. And, you know, we're trying to do our best. So I came from one of those small towns, grew up in one in South Dakota that dried up. High school that I went to is no longer existent. They ship all the kids off to another town. There's no source of businesses. I mean, the population has dropped. It was already pretty small, 273 people. But so you have to have growth. I mean, otherwise we become a bedroom community, or we don't have the resources that people want. So it's a double-edged sword, and yeah, appreciate y'all. And yeah, be safe out there. Have we reserved any resources for Halloween night?
Resources, police resources?
Yes.
Chief will discuss that.
Okay. 10-4.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Leah.
I appreciate what my council members have said, and I agree with the growth part. I grew up in a little small town, Iowa, and that town has shrunk considerably from when I was growing up there. And it is strictly a little bedroom community now, and it's very sad to me when I go back for class reunions, because it just, you know, if it was even being the town it was when I grew up there, it would be nice. The town that my husband grew up in, Idaho, same thing, shrunk to nothing. The city council and the mayor didn't want it to grow, and it didn't. And it just, you know, it's just really sad to see. I want to thank the school. I went to the school board meeting last night. I went to the volleyball game. I went to the football game because I want to be supportive of our school. It's crazy. It's wild to go to a game and they're just getting point after point after point, and they're just crushing their opponent. Sorry, but it was fun. And I love it. Also, I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting at Podunk's Pizza. I still go to Podunk's Pizza about once a week. I want to, you know, just encourage our businesses. And I met a whole bunch of business people because this is the Chamber of Commerce for Ridgefield. And one of the people that was there actually has a business in town here, and it's called Harvest of Peace, and she does different types of massage. And so I got a massage appointment, and she did great. So I'm just encouraging people to use the businesses that are here. And we want to grow these businesses. We want to bring in the revenue from them. We want to encourage people. We don't want to make it difficult for people that have businesses here. Let's bring them in, and I really appreciate them. Let's see, I'm trying to look at my notes here. I also attended a FEMA meeting that was really good. I'm really excited about the city working on, you know, what happens when there is an emergency, like a tornado or a fire. We've already had a tornado and a fire. So that's going to be exciting to get that program up and running. So that's what I have to say about that.
You're referring to the CRESA meeting?
What?
Is that the CRESA
Yes.
meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Cerveny.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending once again. It's always great to see your faces in the audience. Al, I appreciate you letting us know that Donnie's in the hospital. Please extend my heartfelt wishes for a speedy recovery. He has given the city so much and in so many different ways, and we really, you know, it touches our hearts. So please let him know. And Skip, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think there's the opportunity to partner with the List Center Historical Museum and get some of the photos as well as some of the stories that exist about the property and how it came about and how the Wheel Club, the name itself, and the individuals, the legacy families that have been involved over the years, and the reflection that very similar to how the stadium was built. The community came together and made that facility available to meet the needs of the adults and the youth at the time. And, you know, get that message out to the new residents and continue to carry those stories into future generations so they're not lost. So thank you both for bringing that forward.
That's it. Thank you. Next up, police staff report. Chief Richardson will be presenting. Chief.
I just want to talk about texting and driving, but or Facebook or whatever it was. No, I'm not saying anything though.
Duly noted.
He can't write you a ticket.
Yeah. So the September police summary report, I'm going to paraphrase it tonight because the we still have a lot of a meeting to go to, but we had 18 reported crimes in September of 2023. That's actually one less than we had in September of 2022, but it was a high number. So I actually went back all the way back to 2019 and checked, and we actually averaged about 18 crime reports every September since 2019. So it's not abnormal. It's just what a September in La Center is like. We had 3 crimes against persons. One was a DV related assault. You remember I've told you in the past, almost all of our assaults in this town are domestic violence related one way or the other. Suspect was arrested and booked. We had 1 sex offense, and this was a known suspect who disclosed an intimate picture of a known victim to a third party. And so that case was taken and it was sent to the prosecutor for review. And we had 1 harassment intimidation where a parent got in an argument with, I believe it was a Little League coach over at one of the Little League games. And that case was also investigated and that was sent to the prosecutor for review. As far as crimes against property, we had 2 auto thefts in September and both were Kias. One of the Kias, the suspect was a 14-year-old who was actually arrested and booked under that charge. And the other one was an attempt where they actually damaged the car in order to try to steal it. It was probably somebody that didn't know you really didn't have to do that much damage to steal a Kia, but they did. And we had some burglary, thefts, and vandalism involving schools, one of which was a burglary over at the stadium where they broke into the concession stand and they stole the speakers out of the stadium area and some other things. And we also had a theft at one of the sheds at another school where they actually went into a shed and stole some reflectorized vest. And we had a couple of other thefts. One was a theft of building materials at a construction site, which is fairly common in community. And we also had a theft and vandalism of tools in a mailbox from a residence that was vacant. And the people were in the process of moving over a long period of time. As far as Saturday, that is our drug take back. And I just want to check with Melissa. You said we were taking everything, but we're not taking sharps, right? Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, if you come on down, it's supposed to be sunny. So for 10 to 2, we'll take your prescription medications. You don't have to take them out of the bottles anymore. Just have to drop them off and we throw them into a container, weigh it, and it eventually gets sent, sealed, sent to DEA, and they take it down and they incinerate it. So very fast process, and just pull in the back of the parking lot in the back of the station and we'll take care of you.
Chief,
Yes.
what are sharps?
Those are needles, syringes.
Okay.
You see the little orange boxes in bathrooms and
Yeah.
stuff. We just don't take those because of the biohazard.
Thank you.
I have a question. On domestic violence cases, is there someone in the system that like follows up with them after the person is then released and after if
Yes. So both Battleground Muni Court and also the county prosecutor's office, they will reach back out to the victims, and the prosecutor's office has a victims advocate for DV victims. And then we also give them information at the time we actually respond to the call that has resources and things. So yes, they do get follow-up information.
because I hear we've been having one like once a month almost for the last few months, and it's like obviously it can't be the same address because obviously
No.
there'll be other measures in place hopefully by then.
Yeah,
but
yeah. We do have a lot. Well, that is our driving, crimes against persons in this city is domestic violence. It's not uncommon. It was very similar in Battleground. Most assaults in cities like ours are domestic violence related. You go to the big cities like Portland and other places where it's more stranger on stranger crimes, shootings and stuff. But in our community, and remember that domestic violence can be husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, daughter. I mean, it can be a lot of different relationships.
Yeah.
So yes, so those we do follow up on those. Okay. And Halloween, people ask me about Halloween. I just want to remember that I encourage you, if you're parents, make it a family night and, walk around with your kids and enjoy it. I did put some safety information on this last bulletin. Obviously make sure you cross the street where it's safe to do so, like crosswalks. Remember that try to wear something reflectorized or put some kind of reflectorized tape on a dark costume. Remember that kids that have masks on, their vision's limited generally by the mask. And I've reached out, I'm going to try to have 2 officers that are going to work that night. So they'll work I'm looking at probably till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Hopefully nobody's knocking on any doors after 9 o'clock at night, unless you're a really aggressive candy person. But they'll definitely have extra patrols out there that night and they'll stay in the neighborhood areas. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you. All right. Moving on. Administrative Services Staff Report will be presented by Maria Swinger-Inskeep. Maria?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chief, I was wondering if somebody stole those reflective vests so that they could wear them on Halloween night. That's what I was
going to
thinking.
say.
Yeah.
That's their costume. They're going to be a Center city worker.
So we'd like to start tonight by introducing a new employee. We have a new associate planner with the city. Her name is Jamie Viveros, and she is here. And if you want to stand up, Jamie, so they can see you. And then Brian's going to tell us just a little bit about Jamie and her background.
Thanks, Maria. So Jamie comes to us from the city of Treasure Island, Florida. So opposite corner of the country here. We're still trying to figure out why she moved here from Florida. But Treasure Island, she worked her way up from associate planner to principal planner and then to assistant community development director. And she has a bachelor's degree from Akron College and a master's from University of South Florida. So we're very excited to have her and her planning expertise here in-house at the city of La Center. Welcome, Jamie.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. The September sales tax disbursement were down slightly, $5,500 from the same month last year. And then gambling tax is up slightly over last month. As Myrna had mentioned, staff attended an emergency management training that was hosted by CRESA, and they will be working with us to develop our continuity of operations plan over the next year. And then I also attended the ICMA annual conference in Austin earlier this month. We have a couple of date changes for upcoming council meetings. The next 2 months, the second November council meeting will be held on the 15th due to the Thanksgiving holiday. And then the second December meeting will be held on the 20th due to the Christmas holiday. So the first meetings are still the same in November and December, but it's just the second meeting that has been changed. And the City of La Center is promoting the beginnings of art awareness with help from some of our local artists. The goals are to create a thriving art community, integrate art into the revitalization of downtown La Center, and to exhibit art in many forms that will contribute to making La Center a must-see destination. So with that being said, everybody is invited to the reception on Monday, November 6th at 5:30 at the Community Center, aka Wheel Club, to meet and greet some of our local artists, attend the reception to hear about proposed plans and ideas for establishing and incorporating art into the downtown scene. So we do have an art representative. His name's Dan Masterson. He represents the city on the Clark County Arts Commission. And so this is spearheaded by our representative. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Council?
Nope, just writing
Nope.
down notes.
Thank you, Maria. Great report. But you're going to keep speaking, right?
I will.
Next up, we have Ordinance 2023-15, ad valorem taxes in public hearing. Maria Swinger-Inskeep will be presenting. Maria?
So we are doing a public hearing tonight on the revenue sources required by RCW 84.55.120 prior to the passing of the 2024 property tax levy. And just for the schedule, we will also have a public hearing at the November 15 council meeting for the budget adoption. So if we could put up our general fund revenue for 2024. There we go. So we have an increase in our property tax revenue to $691,000, which is a $51,000 increase since last year. And then we also have an increase in utility excise taxes based upon our new homes. We have decreased our sales and use tax to $54,833 a month for an estimated of $658,000 for the year. We continue to think that that is a conservative number based on what we have seen coming in this year. Our card room revenue is estimated at $108,750 per month, totaling $1.3 million for the year. And that is based on what we have averaged so far. And then also the two of the card rooms have expected a small decrease next year. So that's calculated in. And then we anticipate license and permits to be higher than this year. We currently are not anticipating any grant revenue for the general fund for the next year, but of course that is subject to change as grants will hopefully come along, but we're not calculating that in. And then the total general fund revenue is $3.979 million, plus the transfer in from the city's sewer utility of $400,000, making that adjusted revenue $4,378,869. And then we will look at the levy spreadsheet. So the assessed value that we have on there is as of January 1st of 2023. And last year's assessed value was $756,843,574. This year's assessed value is $852,927,411. The value appreciation is just under $43 million at a 5.7% increase. The 2023 new construction assessed value is $53,150,306, which is a 7% increase. And there are no increases for annexations this year. As you remember, we did do the Barnhart annexation, but we are not able to calculate that in yet because that is not complete. So we'll include that on the following year. The state assessed utility infrastructure value is still to be determined. So we are using last year's numbers per guidance from the assessor's office. So the current levy is $639,125. And a 1% increase, which we are asking for tonight, is an increase of $6,391. The new construction levy increase is $44,883. As I said, there is no increase for annexation. So our new rate will be $690,400 divided by our total assessed value gets you a levy rate of 81 cents, which is under last year's levy rate of 84 cents. And just for reference, our levy rate 2 years ago was 95 cents. And then if we can scroll down for the sewer and stormwater utilities, there is no planned increase for sewer rates for the 9th year in a row, and it will remain at $66 a month. And stormwater maintenance, the stormwater maintenance fee will continue at $10.60 a month. And this is the second year that it has not increased since its inception in 2019. And just to reference that back to the sewer, the new development and the rate will create enough revenue for that debt repayment that they continue to make. So I will turn it back over to you, Mayor, if there are any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Council?
How did the rate decrease over the last few years? You'd mentioned that it was higher.
So it is, while it's a decrease, it's because the assessed value has gone up. So it is an increase. So we're getting more money, but it's only because of the assessed value being increased.
Any other questions? All right, this is an ordinance, so I would like to open up the public hearing at 7:39. If there's any comments from the audience, please come up, state your name, and stick to the ordinance at hand, please. There we go.
Al Fellow, 152 West 15th Street. no increase in the sewer rates for the 9th consecutive year. So what that tells me, we haven't, that the cost to run the sewer hasn't increased. That's nonsense. It's time to increase the rate. Thank you. God bless America.
Thank you, Al.
We are doing an assessment of that. And so that could change. And the assessment will let us know.
Any other public comments from the audience? Please come up, state your name, and stick to the ordinance at hand or topic. Are there any callers calling in? Please press *6 to unmute yourself to speak and stick to the ordinance.
Hi, this is Kimberly Goheen. So I just want to, I haven't really been reading this today. I just want to let people know that a lot of harder tax dollars will be spent. They'll bring in new policies and codes. And so we just need to watch this, okay? You know, they're going to take all the land, build up the houses, and there's a lot of money behind that. And that's all I'm going to say right now.
Thank you. Any other callers calling in? Please press *6 to unmute yourself, state your name, address, and stick to the ordinance topic, please. Are there any comments to be read, clerk?
No.
Okay, at this time, 7:41, I'd like to close the public hearing and turn this back over to council. Any comments from council?
Yeah, I'll throw out there that this is kind of along the lines of what I had talked about in council member comments. There's obviously a lot of people that may not be happy with this, but at the same time, we have to continue to function as a city. I do think that the good part of an ordinance like this is that the city of La Center is being responsible and not trying to increase these rates too much. You know, I think that a lot of the burden that creates some of these other issues with homelessness and inflation and all of that truly falls at the state and the federal level. And we're left with no choice, but we have to raise some of the rates. And what, as Councilmember Cerveny pointed out, a lot of people don't understand, including me, how they come up with that number. But when there's an increase in population, that individual contribution can go down. Overall, the expenses go up, but when that's shared across the larger population, the rates do change a little bit. So, yeah, it's a vicious circle. So thank you for the presentation.
Any other comments or questions from council? Can I get a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2023-15 establishing the ad valorem taxes necessary to finance the anticipated requirements of the City of La Center, Washington for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024 by increasing property tax revenue from the previous year by 1%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This is an ordinance. Clerk, may I have roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Casper,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Leaha,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Thank you, council. Next up, we have ordinance 2023-18, amending the annual comp plan. Ethan Spoo, or I believe Alec. Alec, your last name again?
Egarola.
Egarola will be presenting.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Council. Again, I'm Alec Egarola. I am the city's consulting planner with WSP. Mr. Ethan Spoo could not join us tonight. He traveled home to Reno, Nevada to visit his family. So he'll be actually working from home the rest of the week there. So you have me tonight presenting the topic on the annual comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments. We brought this for first review to City Council in late August. And essentially this is changes to the comprehensive plan that are conducted annually and are considered concurrently to determine cumulative effects of all these properties that we're proposing tonight. And so there's a cumulative impacts analysis that goes along with this. So the properties tonight, there are 7 parcels proposed. And the purpose of these updates are to generally better align with the existing or future land uses of these properties. Also, the amendment tonight also includes a text amendment, and this allows for density transfers to occur consistent with the MDR 16 code update that will be considered later tonight as well. And then the main criteria for the annual comprehensive plan update or the comprehensive plan and zoning map amendments, they're subject to the criteria in the city's code, which are in LCMC chapter 18-120. In the staff report, we have an attachment just showing our analysis of that code section. It's pretty lengthy, so I'm not going to get into the details of that. But essentially, those criteria require consistency with the comprehensive plan policies, no decreased level of services of like water, sewer, other essential services such as those, and consistency with the population projections provided by the state through at least 2035 with our current comprehensive plan. If we go to page 168 of the agenda packet, there's a bunch of map changes we are proposing, and I'll just run through each one of those. Again, there's 7 different properties. 4 of these have both a zone change and a comprehensive plan map change, and then 3 have just a comprehensive plan change. And then is this page 164? Oh, you're using the staff report. If you keep scrolling down, it's gonna be a ways down. There should be some maps. There we go. So the first 3 properties here are the Unger properties, which are those top 2 properties, and Cordova, the bottom property there. These are a comprehensive plan change from urban residential to commercial mixed use. This corrects a mapping error for the Cordova property, that larger property to the south, as it's already zoned residential professional. And this will match with the commercial mixed use designation. And then the Unger properties, those smaller 2 properties to the north, these are to match the existing land use, which are 2 multiple family residential dwellings. And these are located in East Downtown, just east of the new Fortune Casino, or west, sorry, I should say. And then the next map, if you scroll down, so this is the Riverside Park. Obviously, this is a park. We're updating the comprehensive plan map change from urban residential to public facilities and open space because this is a dedicated city park. So we're just matching the land use here. And then the next map, please. This is the old City Hall property just next door. Again, there's some funky mapping happening here where it has 2 different zone comprehensive plan designations. We're just bringing the commercial mixed use designation across the whole parcel, just to make it consistent. And next map, please. This is the Larson property. We're removing the public facility open space designation you see in the green on the left, and we're proposing urban residential through the entire parcel as shown on the right. And then the next map. This one's a little tricky. Most of this property is in the county, and then you kind of see a blue line in a small piece of the property in the north. That's parts within the city's UGA, and somehow that fell through some mapping and it didn't receive a comprehensive plan designation. So we're giving that small sliver of parks, public facility and open space designation to match the county's designation on the property, which is parks and open space. So that's the intent of that change. And then the next map, These are zoning changes. The first set were comprehensive plan designation changes. Now these are zoning map changes. Again, these are the Unger properties, those multifamily dwellings. We're just changing the zoning to match the land use from low density residential to residential professional use. And then next map, please. Again, Riverside Park. It's a park now, updating the zoning from medium density residential to parks and open space. And then the next and last map is the old City Hall. Again, changing and bringing a consistent zoning across the site to commercial mixed use. And then there are no known budget impacts from the proposed comprehensive plan map and text amendments and zoning map amendments. And then if we scroll back up, sorry, I don't have the page reference since I was using the agenda packet to reference, but there should be a recommendation motion slide in the staff report. I believe it's this page here. There we go. Thank you. The Planning Commission reviewed and held a public hearing and recommended approval to City Council of the comp plan map and text amendments and the zoning map amendments. Planning Commission and staff recommend City Council open a public hearing to accept public comments for the ordinance 2023-18 for the proposed comp plan map updates, zoning map updates, and the comprehensive plan text amendment. And the proposed motions are shown as there on the screen, and I will take any questions.
Has anything changed on this since we looked at it, previously reviewed it?
No, there has nothing that's been changed.
Any questions or comments? All right. At this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing at 7:51. Are there any public hearing comments from the audience? Please step forward, state your name, and state to the topic of the ordinance. Any callers calling in, please press *6 to unmute yourselves to speak, state your name, and stick to the ordinance topic.
Yes, this is Kimberly Gogi-Nelvin. Hey, so we're mentioning the Growth Management Act, and that's what I was talking about. You know, you have a section here for severability, and I'm going to apply that to the Growth Management Act. Inslee is following this. It's a, believe it or not, one world takeover thing to suppress the people and to rule over us. And believe it or not, you have to read about it. It's very technical. But when you mention the Growth Management Act, I think there will be severability. It says if any section, sentence, clause, or phrase in this ordinance should be held to be invalid or unconstitutional by a court of competent jurisdiction, such invalidity or unconstitutionality shall not affect the validity of the constitutionality of any other section, which basically it'll probably all be severable. So I've noticed that they start putting this that in there. It's probably a clause that's been around for a while, just in case. So again, I'm thinking that Inslee's adopting this GMA is going to come out and find out and bite us in the butt. And but in the meantime, we've got all of these people. We took our farmland away, which is going to be very important. And believe it or not, it comes back down to farmland and our land. If people will watch geoengineeringwatch.org, you'll find out that our insects, our bees, our frogs, our birds, they're dying. And there's a reason for it. It's not because of the climate or it is because of pollution and what they're doing to us with the sprays that they're trying to repel the sunlight from us and this and that. It's aluminum and a bunch of other junk. But it goes into our forests over these last years, and they burn like the Dickens, don't they? Just like a firecracker. Well, they've got that kind of stuff on them now. People really need to pay attention. We are hurting our earth. And as I spoke at Clark County Council, but yet you guys were going to all spend these millions and millions of dollars that are going to make it even worse with overpopulation and things. So I'm not for a lot of people moving in. We don't know what they are, but who they are actually. And it's just not the normalcy of today's world. We're going to have food shortages, and you know what hungry people do with that. also mentions public interest. I've noticed in Vancouver City Council or Clark County, there is no public. The public is still asleep. They're in the COVID sleep here. It's a nightmare when they wake up. But we want to get people to be woken up. And Shalatchi Prairie people need help. There's people up there right now through the county, but they won't be held accountable. Contractors destroying trees, land, and streams there, and the people can't seem to do anything about it. So we
wrap it
want to
up?
make sure that when you are in our government, you do listen to we the people. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Kimberly. Any other public comments from those calling in, please press *6 to unmute yourself to speak. State your name and stay to the topic of the ordinance, please. Clerk, are there any comments to be read?
There are none.
I would like to close the public hearing 7:55 p.m. and turn it back over to council. Council, are there any comments or questions?
No.
All right, can I get a motion?
Is there 3 or 2? There's 2.
We have 2 motions up there. Alec, can you?
Yes, there are 2 motions. The first motion has to do with the comprehensive plan map and text. The second motion is just the zoning map. We have to keep those separate as those are 2 separate. One's the comprehensive plan map and then zoning map. They're tethered, but not entirely contingent upon each other.
Do we have to open up another public hearing for 2 of these on the same ordinance?
No, I think there was opportunity to testify on both of the proposals.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
Hey, Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 2023-18, amending the City of La Center comprehensive plan map and text.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. This is an ordinance. Can I get a roll call vote, clerk?
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Casper,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Leha,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Motion passes. And can I get a motion for the second proposal?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 2023-18, amending the City of La Center zoning map. Do we need to also list each individual attachment?
I don't believe we need to do that.
Okay.
It's been moved. Can I get a second?
I second.
It's been moved and second. This is an ordinance. Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Casper,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Leha,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, council. Thank you, Alec. Great report. A lot of work went into that. Next up is ordinance 2023-13, amending the MDR 16 density code. Mr. Brian Cass will be presenting. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. So for your councils to consider again is the MDR 16 ordinance. This is coming back to the council based on the motion to reconsider that was passed at the last council meeting. So again, just a little bit of background on why we are proposing changes to this code. We've received developer feedback on numerous different sites about our MDR 16 code. We've heard from developers that it's challenging or impossible to develop on our current MDR 16 zones when there's critical areas on the site. We've also heard from developers, including this evening, that it's hard to do a mix of housing on these smaller lots. And then finally, that the 10-unit cluster that's in the existing code is challenging to meet for your typical apartment building. There are generally more than 10 units in an apartment building. And then also staff observation in the LDR 7.5 zone is that density transfer is pretty minimal at this point. So the proposed code change addresses all of those. Goals of the revised code are to increase that lot size that requires a product mix, provide more flexibility in the size of apartment buildings, and then counteract the loss of density that we see when there are undevelopable critical areas on a parcel. So the first sort of piece of this, again, that 10 unit cluster provision, we are proposing to just eliminate that in totality and just let the underlying density limitations of the code drive the size of those buildings. We're also proposing to increase the acreage trigger, so that's basically the size of the parent parcel. That would require a product mix from the current 5 acres to 10 acres. And again, this would require that only larger projects than 10 acres would have to do multiple different types of products on a single lot. It's often hard to accommodate multiple different product types on these smaller lots under that 10 acre threshold, is from what we've heard. Let's see here, I lost my place, excuse me. I think, oh, that was Ethan's code. Somehow we're on the wrong whole slideshow here. Anyway, I'll keep going. Another key element here of this code change is, again, the critical areas and density transfer. And just as a reminder, critical areas are wetlands, streams, slopes, flood hazard areas, basically areas on the site that cannot be developed. And what density transfer allows you to do is to move the homes, or at least a fraction of the homes or units that could have been in that undevelopable area to the developable portion of the site. So in the MDR 16, one of the changes we're doing is to increase the base density of the multifamily component, which would be like an apartment building, from the current 14 units per acre to 16 units to acre. That actually matches with the name of the code, which is MDR 16, sort of lends itself. That's the idea behind the 16 there, is it's a maximum of 16 units per acre. So for whatever reason, our current code doesn't match with its name. So we're correcting that. And then we are allowing a density transfer of up to 2 units per acre from those critical areas to on top of that base zone. And then in the low density residential zone, we are currently allow 10% of lots to go down to a 6,000 square foot, which is smaller than the 7,500 square foot minimum. Basically, we're proposing to increase that to 20% of the lots in the project to be able to go down to that 6,000 square feet. Again, if there's critical areas to transfer some of the density that is lost to preserving those.
And that's only if there's critical areas.
That's only if there's critical areas. That's correct. So, and just its density is sort of a nebulous concept, especially if you're not dealing with it every day. So just some examples. So right now, with the proposed code, again, a multifamily is a base of 16. You could go up to 18 units per acre with this code change. Single family attached, which is like a townhome, the code is 14 units per acre. With density transfer, you could go up to 16 units per acre. And then single family detached, which is sort of smaller detached single family homes, you would go from 12 up to 14 with density transfer. So what does that mean? Well, the Riverside apartment complex, so if you just look at the parcel and the number of units that are on there, that's 23 units per acre. So even with the proposed density transfer, would be significantly less dense than what that project looks like. The detached portion of Riverside is 6.5 units per acre, so I'll get a little lower than the density you could go up to under this code. The Acero apartments over in Ridgefield near the roundabout there are 18.8, or about 19 units per acre. So again, just a little bit more dense than what you could go up to even with the density transfer provision that we're proposing. And then the townhomes there that you see in Ridgefield near the roundabout, that's like an attached townhome product. Those are 14.3 units per acre. So sort of in line with what you could do with the density transfer that we're proposing here. So at this point, staff is recommending that council discuss this proposed code change and consider this ordinance for adoption. Based on the motion to reconsider, the protocol is that it's basically as if the previous motion, when the council ended in a tie vote, it's basically just takes you to right before that point. So you can repeat your discussion and repeat the voting process. And there's a recommended motion here on the screen. And I also just want to reiterate that the Planning Commission went through 2 public hearings on this and recommended approval of these proposed codes updates. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
I thought the planning committee said that there was a couple people that said they didn't approve of this, and that's why they sent in letters saying that they never asked for this to be pushed yet.
That was for the front setback code, which we were also considering at that meeting.
Separate.
At that-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for specifying. I
Sure.
was thinking it was a bundled deal.
I think that when this was presented last time, what may not have been as clear as what Councilmember Boyle had brought up, which is it's kind of a 2-prong test for this ordinance to take effect, which is 1, the property has to be developable for multi-density housing, but also has to include that critical area on the same piece of property.
That's
so
correct. And
it doesn't change everything across the board.
And you'd have to be preserving that critical area and not impacting it to be able to realize the 2 units per acre extra. There's always an option to develop in those critical areas. It's not generally advised and it can be kind of costly, but I mean, it's theoretically possible. So, this, while it does increase the density on a portion of the property, it also sets aside that open space and preserves it.
And secures that for
And
future. Thank you.
You're not taking a fully developable piece of land and increasing the density.
That's right. So
kind of
your maximum density would be if you could build on the whole thing, build in the wetlands or build on the slope. That would be the highest density. But again, to use this density transfer, you have to set those areas aside and you get to regain a portion of that back.
I guess some of my concern is you say it's 2 units or whatever per acre.
Mhm.
Okay, but you're looking at some of these lots, how many acres are each of these? So how many units is that actually putting? I mean, I look at an average household, they have maybe 2 adults, they have some teenagers, you got 2 cars, maybe 3 cars for the adults, you got 2, each kid has a car. One house can easily have 5 cars. So you got 2 extra units per acre. That puts how many more cars on the road? That's the way I look at it. To me, I'm like, who needs the money here? Us, the builders? Are they saying we're not coming in unless you do this because we need to, the maximum amount of profit we need to make on this job is these extra units across, these acres are, what is our profit line?
Yeah, I mean, I think the economics plays into it a little bit. I mean, obviously, developer's not going to build something if it doesn't make any money or if it
breaks
loses money.
even. Yeah, exactly.
So again, the feedback that we're hearing is, that by not being able to transfer some of that density over to the other piece of the property, it just makes the projects not economically viable. So, that's why we haven't really seen a lot of action in our MDR zones or in the mixed use zone over in the Timmon Landing area. So, as they transfer that density, those 2 units per acre, they have to include that in their parking studies. All of our standard codes still apply to that, and they have to be able to provide the same number of spaces per unit that's in our parking code. So they have to figure out how they're going to accommodate that on the site, and then that parking area is considered in the overall density. So hopefully that answers.
And the
that
surrounding city roads are going to have to accommodate for all that growth as well. And I don't see how that can be taken
But
care
if we
of at the
want
same time
businesses
that
to
growth
come
is
to
coming.
town, there has to be customers for those businesses.
When you
And
talk
they
about
can't-
traffic on Timmon,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna, I mean, yeah, I understand growth comes, but what I'm saying is there enough thought into the bigger picture of roads, emergency services, all of those things, instead of just getting excited because we got a great big check and we got builders coming? I get that. That's important for
Sure.
the city.
And in
But
each project has to do a
the
traffic
constituents
study.
don't always know all that. They see the traffic, they see the more cars, they see the people, and where's that balance? And
But they also pay impact fees to help offset some of those impacts.
Sure,
So
good point.
that's
Yeah.
gonna be-
Yeah, so
That's
when a project
supposed to
come
be
in,
the
they
Right.
do a traffic study. They look
Sure.
at the specific impacts that project will have cumulative to any other development that's happened before. And then if, they can contribute impact fees. And then if they're pushing any of our roads or intersections to failure, they're actually responsible for making those improvements as a part of the project.
Okay. All right.
I noticed one of the housing developments that if you're going out on the old Pack Highway, that they actually have, well, there's the model home, which is the office now, the houses are being sold, but there's like a parking lot next to that saying that this parking lot will be for the homeowners. And I thought that was a great idea as far as for taking up space for parking or extra cars.
Yeah, in some of these multi-family zones, they will provide off-street parking spaces that are dedicated. For some of the model homes, they'll actually use an adjacent lot for temporary parking. And then, as the neighborhood builds out and the model home converts back to from a model home to an actual home, they will, develop the neighboring lot where that parking lot sat. But for example, the piece that was mentioned in public comment, I believe they have some actual off-street, parking spots proposed with that to help meet the parking requirements that we require in our code.
Any other questions or comments?
I hope they have some strong HOAs. Nope, no other comments from me.
Any questions? Can I get a motion?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 2023-13, providing more flexibility and density requirements, multifamily unit limitations, and product mixing requirements.
Excuse me, isn't there a public hearing?
It's been moved and seconded. This is
Sneaks
an
up on you.
This is an ordinance. Can I get a roll call vote, clerk?
Do we have to have public comment?
We had it.
Yeah, so this is basically as if we just closed the public hearing from 2 meetings ago. So
Gotcha.
we actually had 2 public hearings with the planning commission and then the one before council a couple meetings back.
So this is an ordinance. We have been moved and seconded. Can I get a roll call vote, clerk?
Councilmember Fox,
No.
Councilmember Casper, Councilmember Casper,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Councilmember Boyle,
Yes.
Councilmember Leha,
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded and passed. Thank you, council. Appreciate it. There were no items removed from the consent agenda. That brings us to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business?
Excuse me, Mayor. This is Kimberly Goheen Elbin. This is under ordinances, resolutions, and public hearings.
All right. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting, please.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Thank you, council. Thank you, everyone, for coming.